Are there any questions?
There's one over here.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, talking about how visible consumerism is and how it's so easy to defer all of these things. It seems to me there's a model in American history, too, of people making it hugely big in industry, the robber barons, or in Silicon Valley or whatever. And then they start doing charitable activities, and those are the things that are getting advertised. And that's what the culture sees. The Carnegie libraries. Well, how many people's backs were that money made on? But I mean, how charitable was Rockefeller before they broke up Standard Oil? You know, I'm just wondering if the way those things are advertised or spoken of also makes people believe, well, I shouldn't give you 50 cents to make a phone call or lend you my cell phone. But, you know, when I make it rich, I'll give you shares in Southwestern Bell. I mean,
Bill Gates is on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it sort of ties into what you guys have been saying.
I'd like to say, I really appreciate what you said about the pleasure syndrome. I see also a stress syndrome today with people working 2 jobs and really trying to juggle their priorities and thinking, hey, I really need to spend time with my family and my children, and maybe I don't have time to volunteer. So I think that is definitely a factor. The pleasure and the stress are both factors. Another thing I see, and I'm seeing this now in India, is that there is more materialism. The Indians are a fast-developing country, and some of our swamis are quite concerned about that. But for me, I feel it's a natural trajectory that if we don't have it, what are we giving up? Whereas when we have everything we can want and still feel that emptiness, that is when people really start coming to religion and saying, I have it all. And now I'm making a choice. I want something more. That world weariness.
Is there a question over here?
Are there pitfalls in service? Pitfalls to the person who's doing service? Sometimes when we teach the young to do charitable acts, they say, oh, I will give to the poor. I'm going to give my teddy bear to this poor little boy. And what it does sometimes is it puts that child in a relationship of superiority to the child he's giving it to, rather than, as Buber would say, I vow relationship. So we've talked, all of you have talked about the positive, but are there pitfalls, are there problems, are there things we can stumble on as we wish to do well and do service?
I'd like to answer that. In our tradition, in our Ramakrishna mission, our swamis and our nuns who are doing work, it's easy to get caught up in the work and forget who you're working for. And then it becomes an ego-driven thing, and it's a very subtle but very powerful and insidious kind of drive that when our elders see it, they will remove us from the situation and transfer us out. So that is something, if the social service becomes predominant without the prayer and the meditation, then we lose one of the rudders.
I will also add, and not contradict at all, I would add another aspect, that if the person gives, if the person does, out of a sense of volunteerism, then the danger you mentioned is obvious. But if it's out of a sense of obligation, and I've only done what I was obligated to do, I didn't do anything beyond the call of duty.
The biblical Quranic tradition says that left hand should not know what the right hand
So, continuing on from this, right? But those two hands do need to be in balance, and sometimes you're absolutely right, they can be harm to the recipient as well as to the donor. And yet there is also learning. So let me give you a story, okay? And this is something that's stayed with me. I was doing some research in Tajikistan, and I was talking to this head of a development agency. He said, when the Soviet Union collapsed, I was an up-and-coming Soviet apparatchik. And then this AKBN thing comes along, and these guys are saying, come and work for us. Nothing doing. Religion, opiate of the masses, all of that kind of stuff. And he said, lo and behold, somebody talked me into it, and I was assigned the job of monitoring that the aid was getting to where it was supposed to. So at that time, people were boiling grass, that type of situation. But they had basically lost all their seed for the next year. So it was a very dire situation, 94, 95. And he said he went to this one village, and there was this woman who had gotten something like 50 kilos of flour 2 weeks earlier. And his job was to ensure that she actually got it. So he goes to the house, and the woman is just hedging. She's an old lady, she's hedging. She just doesn't want to tell where the flour is and show him and so on. Finally he comes out and says, show me the flour. She has no choice, she pulls it out, 11 kilos left. How much bread did you bake in the last 2 weeks? And she says, listen, you're here today, you may not be back tomorrow. The people down the street, they have helped me throughout my life, and we have helped each other. Today you see that I'm indigent, but they are doing okay. But it was incumbent on me to share what I have with them. This guy said, how do you measure that? How do you understand what that cultural value is? We who are brought up in this notion of measurement will say, aha, there's a failure here. Right? So great damage can be done through the system. But you have to understand the recipient and the delivery mechanism, and the intent has to be important.
Thank you. We might have time for one more question, but... All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What are you guys going to do for service tomorrow?
Thank you. Well,
Go to Hallmark.
Well, I have a question. What did that lady say to you about what it felt like to receive a letter written to herself?
Therapy is strange. and when you're confronting yourself and when you are despondent, we're willing to try different things. And so she was willing to do that.
I think it's incredible.
So, but she was, and as a therapist, she always said, we can give you something I would like you to do. You can explain, you say, can you do this? Will you do this? And a lot of times they will say yes, but when they come back the next week, they'll say, I couldn't do it. But in her case, she did. On both of those instances. And again, that's what led to the dialogue where she was going to go by
I have one last thing. Just quickly, I'm sorry. You talked about earlier, you mentioned something about having a detached spirit in service. And then the rabbi mentioned connectedness and bonding within the framework of service. So being that we're in the service industry, so we're volunteers, I was just having a little bit of trouble reconciling which one I agree with. So I just wanted you to shed a little bit of light on that.
Well, I can't speak for the rabbi, but in our tradition, we have just talked about, when we find that the ego has stepped in, and when we find that we're doing something out of guilt, out of pity, for name and fame, then it's not a detached spirit. So detached spirit means mindful.
Okay.
Mindful, watching the mind at the same time so that the ego doesn't creep.
Love that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And, this is an important discussion, and so is its application. So in light with Adlerian philosophy, we do want to honor some nonprofit organizations tonight that are doing good service and taking action on everything we discussed this evening. So, but first I do want to introduce to you Service RX. I haven't been inspired by this project that we put together, this panel discussion. A group of us have actually independently launched an organization called Service RX, and we've put together a great team. We're looking for people to build on our vision, and I would like to invite Riaz Samani to just talk a couple minutes about that.
So I had a different audience in mind when I wrote what I wrote here. So I'm just going to look at it, but I just want to talk to you. A lot of you do a lot of good work. But, as Dina pointed out earlier, only about 25% of Americans volunteer. 75% don't. That's over 200 million. If you can touch 1% of that, that's a huge impact. And I think what we want to do is, through therapists, through schools, through the judicial system, through churches, through discussions like this, we want to pull people out of their shell. But what we want to do is create a clearinghouse that sort of understands these people, puts together a profile on them, whether it's psychological or vocational, understand what they're good at, understand what they want to do with their lives, and then connect them with the right opportunity. So it's working with organizations that are going to be recognized in a few minutes here, that we want to kind of help you guys get volunteers using those different channels. So that's what Service RX is about. If you guys want to talk more, even the organizations that are here, please let me know and we'll get together on it. And we've got these sign-up sheets. If you're interested in joining us, please do. And if you just want to connect on it, we can talk about it more. Thank you.
Yeah, please do fill out those forms if you're interested, and we have a little box there if you want to drop those off on your way out. All right, so we would like to honor our first local organization this evening.